folks, this may seem cliche, but I really believe this. We can do anything we have to do if we're united. And I don't mean united in this vote blue crazy kind of united. I'm talking about united in a sense of purpose. And, going way back, and when I say way back, I'm talking about even the Obama era. People wanted to believe. They wanted hope and change. What they didn't understand was the way the game was stacked. What they didn't understand was what was really at stake with getting it wrong. And in Obama, they saw a man who had charisma, who was young, who was African American, who had fresh ideas and was preaching the word of hope, who had been seen as a community organizer. He had a family that had a lot of intellectual credentials. We didn't get that kind of hope, and we didn't get that kind of change. Actually, I should say we got a lot of hope. We just had it all dashed when we found out that Obama was actually a third-way neoliberal. He had 7 countries being bombed. I got to tell you, Obama, for a lot of the people who have decided that party allegiance is less of a concern than reality, was a huge letdown, going from Cornel West to many, many others, including Sandy Darity and others who have said point blank that Obama did not deliver. And then we get stuck with Donald Trump because the hope, the change, it didn't happen. And the hope and change we were all looking for was not the hope and change of neoliberalism. The hope and change we were looking for was this word that we hadn't really quite come to grips with in terms of democratic socialism. Bernie Sanders came along in 2015. He had been saying this stuff since, forever. But he came along in 2015, and a whole breed of new people heard of what democratic socialism was. And all of a sudden, people were not ashamed, were not afraid, were not allowing red baiting to turn them away from saying, hey, I want to live in a society where people are taken care of. I want to live in a society where we don't just walk over the poor laying in the streets, but we help pick them up. I want to live in a society where the things that matter, like I need to be able to take off for work because my family's ill and I don't want to get penalized for it. I want to be able to get this healthcare problem taken care of, and I don't want to sit there and go bankrupt because I have a bum liver. I want to be able to go to college, but because I didn't win the lottery of life, I won't be able to get to. So we need to fix that. I mean, Bernie brought fresh ideas. He was the guy that came out, the first real candidate that had spoken clearly about democratic socialism. Now, I know there's some people out there that are like, 200% proof socialists that, Bernie's not enough for, right? But bottom line, Bernie Sanders came out and he just totally changed what everyone thought. A movement was born, whether you thought so or not. And that movement, even with people trying to peel away folks, is still alive and well. Will it get Bernie into the White House? Your guess is as good as mine. The DNC is still just as rigged and crooked as it ever was. Nothing has changed with our voting system. And the vote blues are out still trying to tell you, well, wouldn't you vote for any other vote blue? Wouldn't you vote for any other Democrat? Anyone but Trump? So not a whole lot's changed in society, unfortunately. But yet so much has changed with those who were touched by this movement, who found real hope in this. So what Bernie Sanders did recently, and I say this less as a political take and more on a sociological, a societal, time stamp, kind of like a period in our lives that really stands out like as a momentous. Gave a speech the other day. Now, he's given another speech back in 2016 on what democratic socialism was. I believe it was at Georgetown. But this speech was different. This most recent speech was really different. And he laid an extremely unapologetic case for returning to FDR's New Deal-minded thinking. A big, brave, bold set of proposals. Not mealy-mouthed, not dinking and dunking around the edges, not like people below 100,000 get help with their college, and these people over here get stuck with their college, and this happens. No, he's like, this is going to be for citizens, for the United States. We are going to transform our nation. And it was absolutely powerful. It was electric. I messed it up. I said, he is speaking my language. I get it. This is what I want. This is what most of us want. And so there was an article. I really want to play the full hour of Bernie's speech here, but I'm not going to play it. You can look it up. We'll provide the link to it. Actually, the article that I'm about to read through has most of the salient quotes in it. So hopefully this Cliff Notes version will be a teaser, and you can go watch the video on your own if you haven't seen it yet. But let me go ahead and bring this up. This article was in Common Dreams, and it is a powerful, powerful article by Ernest Canning. And it starts out titled, Bernie Sanders delivered the most profound speech since we lost MLK. Starts off with a quote from Louis Brandeis. We can have a democracy in this country, or we can have great wealth concentrated in the hands of a few, but we can't have both. It is not hyperbole to suggest that Senator Bernie Sanders' June 12, 2019 Democratic Socialism speech was as profound as any delivered by either of the two men who Sanders frequently quoted, Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. It was a speech in which the Vermont senator revealed that his campaign and accompanying political revolution offer a unique vehicle for societal transformation from what Jimmy Carter described as an oligarchy with unlimited political bribery to the realization of the promise offered by President Abraham Lincoln in his Gettysburg Address. Government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Sanders brilliantly coupled a condemnation of the tyranny of capitalist oligarchy with FDR's recognition that democracy and freedom are unattainable in the absence of economic security. That message was so powerful that all three major corporate-owned cable networks, Fox News, CNN, and MSNBC, abruptly terminated their live coverage mid-speech. They did so before Sanders outlined what he described as a 21st century economic Bill of Rights. Bernie noted that income and wealth inequality have soared to levels not seen since the onset of the Great Depression. 3 families, he said, control more wealth than the bottom half of the country, some 160 million people. Now, before I go on, I want you to think about this. All 3 major networks cut out midway through his speech. Think about that. Done. Cut out. There's a blackout going on, if you didn't know this. And it's a blackout for the progressive movement. And then deep around, the progressive movement is too busy sniping at who's left enough and who's right enough and blah, blah, blah. When you've got Bernie, who is leading the charge. I would call it shameful that this is not obvious to people. What the hell? I'm going to call it shameful. It is goddamn shameful that people are diverting attention to impeachment, diverting attention to other candidates, diverting attention from this most incredibly important time where we can change the entire narrative of our nation. These other candidates are not providing anything transformative. And those that are biting off of Bernie's game. They're aping Bernie's game. So let's keep going. Bernie noted that income and wealth inequality have soared to levels not seen since the onset of the Great Depression. 3 families, he said, control more wealth than the bottom half of the country, so 160 million people. That was actually an understatement. As of 2017, America's 3 richest individuals, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, and Warren Buffett, own as much wealth as the bottom 160 million, according to a report released by Institute of Policy Studies. If left unchecked, Josh Hardy, the study's co-author, observed, wealth will continue to accumulate into fewer and fewer hands. Sanders underscored Hardy's point by noting that 49% of all new income today goes to the top 1%. 49% of all income goes to the top 1%. That's just ridiculous. The problem of gaping inequality is not limited to whether it leads to an unsustainable breaking point that can spiral into the next Great Depression, as explained by Kevin Phillips in Wealth and Democracy, quoting political scientist Samuel Harrington. Money becomes evil not when it is used to buy goods, but when it is used to buy power. Economic inequalities become evil when they are translated into political inequalities. Political inequality in turn leads to more dangerous economic inequalities. Extreme inequality is dangerous because, in Sanders' view, it paves the way for demagogues to exploit widespread anger and despair as occurred in the 1930s. Then as now, Sanders proffered, deeply rooted and seemingly intractable economic and social disparities led to the rise of right-wing nationalist forces all over the world. In Europe, Bernie added, the danger and despair was ultimately harnessed by authoritarian demagogues who fused corporatism, nationalism, racism, xenophobia into a political movement that amassed totalitarian power, destroyed and ultimately murdering millions of people, including members of my own family. Sanders lost family in this. It's not like something that he's pointing at. It's something he experienced, he lived through, he owns. And now he's trying to rectify and make sure no one else ever has to go through it. In an offhand admonishment to the "it can't happen here" crowd, people who were shocked to see neo-Nazis taking part in a torchlit march in Charlottesville, Sanders reminded us that on February 20th, 1939, over 20,000 Nazis held a mass rally in Madison Square Garden in front of a 30-foot-tall banner of George Washington bordered with swastikas. Sanders, a self-described democratic socialist, revealed that which political scientists have long known. Bernie is not a textbook socialist. Fancy that. He does not seek public ownership of the means of production. To the contrary, Sanders is essentially an FDR-like New Dealer who calls for ordinary citizens to take on what FDR described as the old enemies of peace: business and financial monopoly, speculation, reckless banking, class antagonism, sectionalism, and war profiteering. Now, what's not to love about that? And for those people that just want to burn it down, sorry, that's not what he's saying there. So I appreciate you'll have feels about that. But for the rest of us that are, looking at our autistic children and hoping that we can make some headway, it's pretty damn good. Anyway, Sanders, quoting Dr. Martin Luther King, "We all too have socialism for the rich and rugged free market capitalism for the poor," transformed the word socialism from a right-wing epithet to a useful tool for exposing right-wing hypocrisy. "President Trump and his fellow oligarchs," Bernie observed, "hate democratic socialism because it benefits working people, but they absolutely love corporate socialism. Examples of corporate socialism include massive government subsidies and tax breaks, the pharmaceutical industry profiting from public research, and a $700 billion Wall Street bailout that was accompanied by trillions of dollars in federal interest-free loans." Now, some dipshit from CNBC Squawk Box had things to say about this. Obviously, it's not a literal thing. What he's saying is that, hey, we're not talking about owning the means of production. We're talking about who is getting the benefit of public money. Public money. Not taxpayer dollars. Public money. Public money being money that is created by our government every time Congress authorizes spending. And every time it sanctions a tax, it deletes that money. He's talking about that, though he doesn't specifically say that, for a host of reasons. He's already fighting the war of explaining what democratic socialism is. He's already fighting a war to beat back red baiting and McCarthyism in 2019. He is fighting a war on so many fronts that you're just going to have to get over it, Peter Pan, Count Chocula, and grow the hell up. Okay? All right. All right, good talk. Let's keep going. Bernie made a general reference to government subsidies received by the Trump Organization. In the future, he'd do well to specifically point out the $157 million New York taxpayer monies used to build privately owned Trump golf course in the Bronx. Now, I want to talk about that. New York taxpayer monies. New York is a state. States are not monetarily sovereign. Whenever a state spends money, unless it's been granted a grant, a block grant, some sort of a subsidy from the federal government, etc., it literally is taxpayer dollars. So when New York gives money out, it is literally giving taxpayer money. And Donald Trump received $157 million in New York taxpayer monies used to build the privately owned Trump golf course in the Bronx. Think about that. Not federal dollars, New York dollars. He literally skeezed $157 million from New Yorkers. Without mentioning them by name, Sanders demolished the concept of freedom as advanced by self-described libertarians, or as Steve calls them, LOL-bertarians. Like the rapacious Koch brothers, theirs is a vice into virtue ideology that extols individual greed as a virtue and rejects the very existences of public interest beyond individual or group self-interest. It is a philosophy that is at odds with a core purpose of government, explicitly recognized by the U.S. Constitution, to promote the general welfare, the public purpose. The public purpose being you and I, serving our needs. Libertarianism is directly opposed to it. What a shame. Now you know why I'm not an LOL-bertarian. And anyway, the freedom the Koch brothers extol is unfettered ability of the privileged few to amass enormous wealth at the expense of the many. But, as FDR and now Bernie Sanders forcefully observe, for the rest of us, there can neither There can be neither democracy nor freedom without economic security. Folks, how many of you have economic security in your lives? How many of you are running from an axe falling because you're a contractor? Or maybe you're in the gig economy. And for those of you who have been at your job for 30 years, some of us were at a job for 17 or 18 years and found the axe. It can happen to you. Don't get cocky. But after noting that extreme wealth inequality not only has a detrimental impact on the quality of life, but has also produced a significant disparity in life expectancy. The length of life, man. You want to talk about murder? Neoliberalism, austerity, is murder. Period. How many people do you have to murder to go to jail? Well, most people would only have to murder one person, they'd go to jail. But these freaking neoliberals, they can murder millions. And they get patted on the back for being great free market-minded people. Go figure. Anyway, Bernie asked a series of rhetorical questions to drive home the point, e.g., are you truly free? If you cannot afford the prescription drug, you need to stay alive. Sanders then argued for a 21st century economic bill of rights in order to complete FDR's unfinished New Deal. This would include the rights to a decent job that pays a living wage, to quality health care, a complete education, affordable housing, a secure retirement, and to a clean environment that Bernie proclaimed as the essence of democratic socialism. Now, that's the end of our article here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you, I'm going to put this question out to you. I want you to think about it long and hard. The big thing there, because Bernie's economic team has been working day and night, is to explain to people that not only is everything that he's saying he wants to do doable, but it's easily affordable. Easily. Without having to eat our peas. Without having to make tough choices. Think about that. A monetarily sovereign nation has no problem spending $750 billion on the military without raising taxes, in fact, lowering taxes. Now, Bernie's not talking about government run. What he's talking about is government paid for and regulated. Huge chasm of difference. If you don't understand that, if you think that somehow or another Bernie's advocating for doctors and whatever to suddenly be making, minimum wage, you're a fool. Just stop. But what he's done is he's laid the groundwork for all of our basic needs. A federal job guarantee, free college, eliminating student debt. I want you to think about what democratic socialism is so that you can defend it. So that you're not stuttering and stammering when these idiots come at you, trying to knock you off your game, say, well, Marx and communism and this and that. No one is asking for that. Or the few that are, they're not the ones we're talking about right now. We're talking about what Bernie is putting forward. And what Bernie's putting forward is going to help all of us immediately. This is not some pie in the sky thing. However, it is absolutely dependent on you and I, we the people, understanding the economics, understanding what it means to be a democratic socialist, understanding what it means to be a social democracy, understanding that spending on the public purpose is not in any way, shape, or form the same as communism or anything else like that. After a little while, you can't keep giving yourself a pass. You can't keep cutting yourself a little slack. At some point in time, you got to break a little sweat to learn this stuff. At some point in time, You've got to realize how vital it is that you become useful in this fight, and that you stop posting nonsense as a social media activist, and you stop talking nonsense at the water cooler, and that you stop going to nonsense rallies and start putting your focus where it matters. A Green New Deal. Teaching people what it means to be a democratic socialist, and what it means, more importantly, without the labels, just to spend on the public purpose, including for Republicans and LOL-bertarians and vote blue sycophants that will try to put a neoliberal in there. Folks, there's 20 other candidates being placed up on that stage. And of those 20, there's only a couple, and I mean literal couple, maybe 2 or 3, tops, that have a dream that is even worth talking about. But none of them, not Tulsi, not Elizabeth Warren, not anyone, comes close to the breadth and vision of Bernie Sanders. There's an entire machine and a movement backing this. We can do great things. But it does take all of us to care enough to stop checking out, to stop being trivial progressives, but start being real progressives. Stop showing up when it's convenient and start showing up when it's not convenient. Start doing work when it hurts, not just when it's easy. Pitch in when you need to, not when you want to. Do what must be done, not what you feel you can do. Stop giving yourself a pass for being too busy, and start finding time when you're on the toilet. Do what you must to make this happen. Because without us, the right wing, they're licking their chops. They're counting on you being a trivial progressive, a part-time warrior, a sometimes activist, a when it's convenient-minded progressive. If I don't have anything better to do and there's no concerts or drinking to do tonight, kind of progressive. Oh, there's no party tonight, so maybe I can be a progressive tonight. He really requires you to understand what's at stake if you don't stay committed and focused. Bernie Sanders gave the speech of a lifetime. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to go run around talking about impeaching Trump? Are you going to talk about some other distraction? You better play it straight, folks, because this opportunity is going to pass before our very eyes, and the suffering will be immense. I'm Steve Grumbine with Real Progressives. Have a great day, everybody. I'm out. And by the way, for those who act like dads, who have children look up to them as a dad, for those of you who play the role of dad, happy Father's Day. Good night.